This video I'll be making a pin for someone in our military. Freedompins.org has a program where you can make and send them any amount of pins you like. They in turn send them to our military personnel in combat zones. As a former Vietnam combat vet, I know getting something from home can be a big deal. The first few pins I make are with Purple Heart. Please support our military, and I'll leave a link down below to freedompins.org. And I start out with a piece of Purple Heart. I want to rip it. It's the size of it is enough to where I can rip it and then get multiple blanks out of it. So I use a little backing board or spacer board off of the fence, and I measured halfway and would just rip it down the middle, and then we'll cut blanks out of it. But it's easy wood to work with, rips really quick, easy. I keep the saw itself waxed so it's smooth, easy to push through. And then I take two at a time and then just start making the blanks out of it. I measured enough to where it's a slimline pin, so I measured it to where I had some room on both ends for the blanks when I set them up. And it's a slimline pin, and I measured it up. You can actually, from Freedom Pins, you can actually buy the kits. I think they're $2 each from them. I think they actually come from Penn State Industries. But here I measured the tube for the tubes, the first tube, and then I set the second tube up, make sure enough room, plenty of room. So we'll go ahead and we'll cut it in half, get it ready for the drill press, and got them both set. And we'll go over and we'll mark the ends of both of them and get those over on the drill press. I use a spring-loaded punch. I've had it for years. You just set it up and then push it through and it'll pop the hole right in it. It's really made from metal, but you can use it for anything. Does well on these little blanks. Again, setting the second tube up, getting it marked, putting the punch in, smack it, and let's go to the drill press. Over to the drill press, brad point drill all the time. Nice smooth. I need to get somehow to hold that down, but makes quick work of it. I think it's a 7mm bit. And then the second one, same way, center it up with that brad point, makes it easy to center. And jumping around on me, but pushes right through, nice and smooth. No chips, no splits, pretty easy. So let's go glue it up, and we'll glue both tubes in. Again, I use the scale. I'll put 7 to 9 grams of each one in, get it exact, 7 and 7 on each, I think, on this one. Put it in a small plastic cup with a popsicle stick, stir it up real good, make sure you get the sides, it's easy to do with the stick. Use a punch to put the tubes in, a little denatured alcohol to wipe the ends off. And then you just let the whole thing sit, and you'll see the cup itself change color as it gets hardened. And I use the stick and the cup kind of as an indication of when it's done. You can grab it and start smacking around. So let's get it on the lathe. Now we'll set it up on the lathe. I I use a carbide small radius square cutter, and as usual I start off a little too slow. I think I've got about 600 or 700 RPM, and it'll grab real quick. And I need to jack the, need to jack the up a little more. Need to get a little more than that, and need to tighten it down a little bit too. I may not have tightened that tailstock in. The Purple Heart's easy to work with. It's really nice wood. You can take chunks out of it or smoothly go down it. I do a little of both. I'll tend to take some chunks out small, and I don't take a large chunk out though. You can, I've seen some that'll take it almost all the way down to the bushing and then take the next one. I think it's easier to splinter that way. So I take little smaller chunks like that and then smooth it out. And then the sanding, I start out with 220 grit, and make sure that as you're sanding that you stop it and go with the grain also to kind of clean, make sure it's the lines on it, the sanding lines are cleaned up. But I use denatured alcohol on this quite a bit. Some woods you don't have to use very much of it at all, you just have to wipe it a little bit. This Purple Heart tends to get gritty. It's pretty open grained, so the grains of the sanding that you do tend to get stuck in there. So I'll use a good bit of denatured alcohol to kind of get it out of there and to make sure it's wiped clean. And then I'm sanding here at 600 grit, doing kind of the same thing. This will be the last sanding grit that I do. And go through kind of the same way. Make sure you get with the grain. Then again, the denatured alcohol to make sure it's really cleaned and those little gritty things are out of there. And then I put on a good bit of sanding sealer, simply because the grain is pretty wide on it, and it'll soak it up and take a good chunk of it. So I'll put several coats on, make sure they're rubbed in really well before I polish. Again, make sure, I think it's a little more on the sanding sealer. Then I'll go to the polish. I think there's a little bit of polish. And make sure that it's friction polish, so you make sure you get that pinched in and kind of heat it up a little bit. Like here I'm pinching it, make sure it's getting hot for it to set. And I think we get at least 2 more coats like that, yeah. Again, make sure that the friction polish, you let it work with the friction. It'll heat up, and then the shine will come out on it. I think this is the last one I do. And again, pinch it up, make sure you got it. And there we go. So let's put it together. Fairly simplistic putting it together. The nib on the end, there's a spacer in the middle that goes over the transmission there in the middle, and then the clip on the end with the end cap. And I think here I'm deciding which one goes where. I think I switch them to where the bottom, there you go, yep. And we'll put the cap on first, since it's kind of the easiest to do. Just line it up where you want it. and put it in the press, making sure it's square, won't get pinched. And I put the brass end on the plastic end. Got to protect it from scratching just in case it moves or anything. And it presses in just very easy. Pops right in. Alright. Next one to do would be the nib at the bottom. See which way I wanted it to go. Yeah, let's go that way. Okay. Nice thing about that little plastic is there's an indentation in it where the nib will go. So it's not just flat on the tip of it. And it goes in very easily. And the next thing is the transmission. I kind of sneak up on it a little bit. I've had one that I put together that was too short, so I tend to make sure that the transmission is in there, and then put the pin itself in and make sure that it's probably a little short. Then I'll go back and I'll push the tube in kind of how much more I think it needs. Sometimes that'll fool you where the brass is. There's a little ring right above there. You can see that you're supposed to press it in up to there. I don't. I put this thing fully together. I don't really have to do that. All you have to do is put the pin in, screw it in, and then you can go ahead and tell where it fits as far as coming out of the end. You can see this one's too short, and I pull it apart and go ahead and push it together a little more. I think it actually goes a little beyond where that mark was. Yeah. And then get it out, and you can try fit it. You can do it several times if you need to. The problem is once you go too far, that's a problem. And that fits very well. Okay. Nice pin. Turned out good. So there's the finished one. And I do several more of these, or going to do several more of these. But the finish turned out really well. The wood turned out very nice. Turned out to be a really nice pen. Hopefully somebody will appreciate it. I certainly appreciated making it for our military. Again, I'll put a link down at the bottom, freedompens.org. And thanks for stopping by. Thanks for watching the channel. Please stay tuned for more in my wood turning series. Please subscribe and hit the notification bell, and keep in touch.